Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, The School of Love. My name is Maria and I'm helping people discover their inner potential for love towards oneself and towards the others. From the very beginning, I must emphasize the fact that this channel is not part of my educational and research activities at Hiroshima University. It is nonetheless part of my privilege, joy, and sense of duty to propagate and implement knowledge, information, as well as motivation and inspiration outside the limited framework of academic endeavors. With that being said, let's dive right into today's topic, which is Murakami Haruki. So, this video is part of a series on global literature with focus on authors, on writers, which I regard as crucial for educational purposes in terms of creating one's own critical thinking and learning how to employ it. They were very helpful for myself, and I hope to pass on these ideas or the ideas I have learned from these books to further persons who might enjoy this idea, who might entertain this idea of critical thinking and its practical way of employing its practical employment in real life. In today's video, I shall deliver several introductory elements to Murakami Haruki's literature, and in the next videos, I'll refer to several of his novels in particular. So in today's video, I will talk a little bit about biographical data and then the major characteristics of Murakami Haruki's literature, the selection criteria for what I considered major works, as well as the two elements which turn Murakami Haruki from a popular writer into one carrying a sense of significance and legacy. So to get started, Murakami Haruki was born in 1949 in Kyoto. This is the former imperial capital in Western Japan. And throughout the decades, since early 70s, he has published several novels, many short stories in various journals and periodicals, and many of them have served then as the foundation for some of his novels. Then he has also published essays and non-fiction, as well as translations of major American, North American, and Canadian writers. I shall focus mainly on novels. And so I said beginning of the 70s, but it wasn't right. It was late 70s. So Murakami Haruki has published many of them, starting with the so-called Trilogy of the Red, which includes 3 novels because it is a trilogy. With the first one being Here the Wind Sing from 1979, continuing with Pinball 1973 from 1980, and finishing with A Wild Ship Chase from 1982. Furthermore, he published in 1985 Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World, but his breakthrough was after the publication of Norwegian Wood from 1987, which, in my opinion, also starts his more active tackling of musical elements in his work. That's why I would sometimes refer to Norwegian Wood as a novel on which echoes the sound of loneliness. 1 year later, in 1988, he published Dance, 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 And 3 years later, he published, so in 1992, Murakami published South of the Border, West of the Sun, one of the novels which was also popular, quite popular, but who is also very controversial due to its explicit sexuality. One of the novels which I personally regard as a major milestone, both in late modern literature as well as in Japanese literature, is from 1994-1995, and it's titled The Wind Up Birth Chronicle, in which I would say Murakami explores further concatenations of musical elements in his literature. This is why sometimes I refer to it as the melody of hope, so where the narrative actually is intertwined with melodic structures. The next 3 novels, Sputnik Sweetheart, Kafka on the Shore, and After Dark, actually are a sort of prelude to his magnum opus, to his masterwork, which is Ichikyu Hachion, or 1Q84, a monumental work, I must say. It was published, the first 2 volumes in 2009, and then the first volume in 2009, and the second and the third volume in 2010. And it is one of those novels which really could compete with Hermann Hesse or Thomas Mann in terms of how musical elements or musical structures or musical architecture is combined, is intertwined, is intermingled with literary structures. It is I cannot say it is my favorite or one of my favorite novels. I am more on the conservative side when it comes to literature, but this one is a very powerful combination between what they call a novel of formation, a Bildungsroman, and its very dissolution in late modernity. So the next 2 novels, Colorless Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage, as well as Killing Commendatore, are 2 novels obviously of exploration, in which Murakami experiments with various ways of constructing literary discourse after the monumental Ichikyu Hachion, but nevertheless he doesn't attain the same level of architectural solidity and message depth as he had done in Ichikyu Hachion. So, which are the major characteristics in Murakami's literature which make it both impactful, a challenge to the literary establishment in Japan, and a source of inspiration for a younger generation who might address this sort of legacy? The first characteristics is what I would label the dislocation of emotional belonging. Murakami's characters could carry any nationality, lacking essentially any trace of a clearly stated Japaneseness. The same is valid for the plots, which could happen anywhere in the world. This is one of those features which make him very vulnerable to critique or critics coming from the inside of Japan. Japan is known for a country which for a very long while has highlighted its homogeneity and uniqueness as well as its geographical isolation, and has been very much insisting on keeping up this narrative. Well, in Murakami Haruki's literature, we find precisely this element being challenged and replaced with a sense of universality. Not necessarily a positive universality, but by all means a sense of longing for belonging on a global stage. With this connected, the second characteristics is what might be labeled the universalism of togetherness. This encompasses the yearnings and quests of his characters as being generally human, not specifically linked to any modern lifestyle. obviously a certain relation to the urban environment of a post-industrialized, service-based and consumption-oriented society persists, employing loneliness, hope, and love as the three major topics of his literature. But it serves rather as literary pretext than as historical embedding. What this means, it refers to a sort of ideological atemporality, which colors and at the same time alienates the atmosphere of Murakami's novels. But on a temporal scale, not on so much on the geographical or national or ethnical scale. And the third characteristic is the late modern tendency towards intermediality, respectively multimediality of culture. We have seen, or I have seen this in Thomas Mann's literature, for instance, or in Hermann Hesse's literature, but also in Paulo Coelho's literature as well. This refers to the stretching or even surpassing of classically established boundaries between artistic expressions, so that the artistic discourse possesses, in its intrinsic variety, the ability to transcend the expressive limitations by incorporating elements from diverse media, such as music, theater, cinema, visual arts. Interactive communication modes, the internet, chatting, social networks, are included in the literary discourse, thus hitting a vitally important string at the deepest core of the global readership and leading, again, to popularity and financial success. So here, in Murakami's literature, we do not only deal with words and sentences and paragraphs. Much more we deal with the intertwining of modes of expression. So such as chat fragments and the reproduction of emails. And even more, so on a more general or structural level, we deal with construction paradigms which refer to symphonic discourses, such as in Ichikyu Hacho, and this is where it becomes very clearly. So which are the analytical criteria in discerning that Murakami Haruki's literature are worth analyzing and presenting to a larger readership or audience, and to be, while embracing it critically. So the first analytical criteria refers to the popularity and impact locally and internationally. By the very fact that they belong to the genre of popular culture, Murakami Haruki's novels and short stories are inevitably part of the wider field of consumption literature. Altogether, they are part of the huge industry of cultural consumption. Artistic products in this branch of late modern consumption area, for instance animation, manga, fashion, music, movies, inherently possess a very strong market-oriented feature, so that their very existence resides in their sellability. However, there is a fundamental difference between works of art released solely for the purpose of entertainment and thus exclusively aiming at financial gain without any attempts of attaining specific standards of value, and works of art produced while balancing on the red thin line between tending to fans' expectations and paying tribute to the creator's own aesthetic and ideological parameters. Therefore, among the several literary publications released by Murakami Haruki, encompassing novels, short stories, memoirs, theoretical writings, dialogues, I have chosen these three novels, which seem to have fulfilled the criteria of powerfully impacting the field of contemporary literature while turning into important financial successes. So this is the first criterion. The second criterion is the structure and relevance of the plot. As a consequence of the first criterion, the inner construction of a work of art targeting at high sales might fit or not into the classical standards of equilibrium and logic. Moreover, the intensity and credibility of the story being told, even in case of fantastic or science fiction works of art, is a fundamental principle in discerning whether the respective product finds a place within the national or international cultural heritage. In this train of thought, I have decided to include those novels which combine in a balanced way both the Japanese and the Western cultural legacy, and thus, in spite of being originally written in Japanese, manage to address a readership beyond geographical limitations. This would be the second criterion. The third criterion is related to characters and their alleged universality, without effacing their singularity. An ultimate consequence of the first two criteria, the way in which characters are displayed, both in their integration within the general flow as well as in their development throughout the plot and in their interactions with other characters, is regarded as an essential means in ascribing artistic force and deep credibility to a work of art, literature included, in late modernity. This focus on the uniqueness of each character does not necessarily reside in their ability to surpass any former literary or otherwise appearances, but rather in the message such a character carries in its historical emergence. All of the three novels discussed later provide powerful characters who possess the potential to move towards the status of archetypal typologies of humanity and transcend in their frailty the traditional view of literary or artistic imaginary human categories as being above quotidian suffering and failure. On a final note, it is important to indicate that creating a work of art does not automatically imply targeting its success at a specific readership. Instead, it refers to that ability of the artist or of the writer to address the human transgressions in a way which allows their characters to stay human while turning into archetypes. This would be the third criterion. As a conclusion, I refer to the two dimensions which deliver significance to Murakami Haruki's literature so far. The first one is the intersection of magical realism and autobiographical elements. The intersection, magical realism, refers to the seamless transition between physical and psychical reality or realities, with the unmediated alternation between mystical or story-like paragraphs and quotidian events. Autobiographical elements refer to the preference for simply cooked, though delicate and delicious food, for the love for good music, especially jazz and rock, or the classic, for the fondness for small, elegant bars, etc. This intersection of magical realism and autobiographical elements abounds in Murakami's writings and contributes to the emergence of a literary world in which music and words play an interchangeably equal part. The second element is the relationship between reality and fantasy, or the power of imagination connecting the two. While an aesthetics of eclecticism is treated both as a temptation and as a challenge in structuring the literary work, the ideology of syncretism is regarded as the foundation in constructing new contents based on existential strategies of juxtaposing the existing blocks of knowledge within the emergent flows of inspiration and novelty. This falls within the singular dynamics exemplarily encoded in the Japanese words for tradition, dento, respectively densho, referring to that process occurring historically by which the innovation is incorporated within old frameworks, which are enhanced and turned into perfection, or aspiration towards perfection. This follows a different dialectical pathway than the Western emblematic opposition between tradition and innovation, between stagnation and progress. The new is essentially built on the dissolution of the old. In next videos, I shall talk in more detail about three of the most representative novels published so far by Murakami Haruki, and I invite you to join me in this journey of exploration of Japanese literature as embedded in the flow of Weltliteratur or universal literature. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to welcoming you very soon again. Love and peace to you all.